All right, it is 6:30. A quorum of the board is present. This meeting has been duly called. That notice of the meeting has been posted in accordance with Texas Open Meetings Act, Texas Government Code 551. Will you please stand with us as Mr. Cooper does our invocation?
Thank you. Heavenly Father, please be with us tonight. Give us guidance, wisdom, as we make important decisions for this community. Please be with all of our staff as they prepare for a new year. Be with our students, our community, our family. Have a safe and productive summer. In your name, amen.
Amen. And now the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
All right. Josh, is there any public comment? None? Okay. All right, next up we have the consent agenda.
Second.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Adam. Any discussion? All in favor? All right. All right, next up we have the superintendent's report.
All right, so we just wrapped up our summer session here. We had 3 teacher trainings that were well attended. We were excited about, and just finished our administrator training, which just getting us ready for the start of next year and getting things right early. Wanted to let you guys know that we have ID'd and recovered the cost of repairs from the damage of the senior prank. So all those fees have been paid. And then I will turn it over to Mr. Boone for the finance report.
PowerPoint for this one. All right, so for the finance summary, it's attached on your board book. If you open up to the first page, that first graph at the top is our ADA, and you can see that we budgeted this 25-26 school year at 1111 ADA, and we ended the year averaging 1118. So doing pretty well there. That next graph is our revenue and expenditures as of the month end of May. And so the revenue that was realized to that point was $12,349,394, which was 79%. And then on the encumbered and expended side, we have encumbered and expended $12,673,504, which is 81%. Then if you go down to that next page there, it's a comparison of where we are this time to compared to last year. And so on our revenue, you can see in that far right column, we are up $634,185 from this time last year. On our expenditure side, we're up $236,166. One thing just to call out, at the bottom of the expenditures on this column, you can see it's $12,420,295. And you might notice that that's a different amount than what's in the graph above. And just so everyone's aware, the graph above is also including encumbered expenses, and that is whenever we put in a PO to get place an order, but then we are still waiting on an invoice to pay that. Then if you look below that spreadsheet, you see the child nutrition revenue and expenditure comparisons from May this year to May last year. You can see that their revenue is up $48,704, and they've actually expended less than this time last year by $31,719. Then the last page on the summary is the bond construction update. You can see at the top that total balance of the funds we have. You can see what's been paid historically at the first line of expenditures, and then what was paid in May. And then that gives us a total expenditures of $34,118,719. And then at the bottom there, we have a list of items that are still expected to be paid on the bond. And then that very last line leaves you with what we're estimating to be remaining funds. Any questions on any of that? No? All right.
Before we finish superintendent's report, I wanted to have Kurt come up and update on the turf project and the. What? Oh, I'm sorry. Is there any check payments questions before Josh is in? Okay. If you could come up and update the turf project and the elevator repair work we're getting done.
Evening, fellas. How we doing? Good. They have started the elevator at LSK. Try not to drop all my stuff here. They expect to be done week of July 6th. They're going to start the wiring next week, and then they'll move from there straight into the high school, demoing it at the high school. And they're, barring any major complications, should be done before school starts with both of them. Turf project, I spoke with them today. They're planning to start the week of July 6th, take 3 weeks, unless we run into something that's unknown to us. We did locate some drainage lines for them, so they have an idea where to tie into. And then they'll get the contracts to Mr. Boone tomorrow. So.
Thanks, Kirk.
You bet.
All right, moving into our discussion action items, we're going to consider adopting legal local policy update 127.
These are all a result of the special session from the 89th legislative session. The majority of this is just revised policy stuff. There's no changes necessarily. As you guys know, the legal stuff we have to take on. The local stuff, there's 9 local policies. You guys had this in your packets. I'll kind of briefly go over them. BJCF local is just clarifying superintendent expectations on as far as what negligence is for my role. CAA local, DH exhibit turned into DHA legal. So that's just clarification. They're just changing those policy words out. CFB local is a change that allows schools to change their capitalization threshold to 10,000. Ours is currently at 5. So next board meeting, I talked to Mr. Boone, and we're gonna go ahead and bring you guys a policy for us to up ours to $10,000. Does anybody have a question about doing that?
Do we have to clear that with the auditors too, as well, to get their side? I guess so.
They'll ask us in the audit, like, if we made any changes to the policy.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it does say if after consultation with auditor or other advisors, so I'm sure they'll ask us.
DC local, once again, is making changes from referencing DH exhibit to DHA legal. DH local is once again changing DH exhibit to DHA legal. And that's it. And all this, DH exhibit was a list of educator code of ethics, and they're just making that policy now. DPA local is basically they're splitting a policy into principal requirements and council requirements. That was all one policy at one time. EHBB local is basically taking EHBB legal and making it to where it's telling districts we cannot, when we're identifying students for GT selection, we cannot use demographics as part of that selection. And then FFF local further defines staff misconduct, but you have all that stuff in your packet. If there are any questions, or we can make a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? All approved. All right, next up, we have the HVAC. Consider approval of HVAC train proposal at the middle school.
Okay, what we're going to do is we're probably going to table this vote tonight, but I want Kurt to come up and talk about kind of what our course of action is. We discussed, we have your quote you got in your board packet was about replacing everything at one time, and after talking to some board members individually, we've looked at the possibility of keeping that bond money and replacing AC units as they go out, just to maximize taxpayer money. And then also, when we were getting ready for all this, we found out a couple of our units were hooked up to gas, so we have to, that changes the quote a little bit. So I'll let Kurt kind of touch base on all that.
I think you pretty much covered it, sir. I do have, and I was able to get your questions answered. We're ordering from Train. Since it's less than 500 miles, they'll carry the freight. If anything shows up damaged, return the freight back to them. Train will take it up with the carrier. We have a farm tractor that should pick up the smaller units. They're getting the weight for the 5-ton and 10-ton to me, so we'll plan accordingly with that. I have a couple people I think I can reach out if I need a bigger forklift, so I won't have to rent one. It'll be hey, can you help me out here real quick? And then we originally walked the site. I was trying to push to get them all done at one time, just because the age of our units, when they go down, it's still a 2-week lead time, and that'll affect, as we know, in August is when we have the hottest months. That'll affect the AC. So if an AC goes down, so it's going to go down right as school starts. I'm trying to avoid that, but I also understand what we're planning. So,
Jerry, can you just state your questions for those that
sorry.
didn't know? You're good.
Yeah, for sure. The question was really related to freight on some of that quotes we had, because it said FOB factory, which typically would be our responsibility
Yes, sir.
from the factory here. So it's getting an idea of what that looked like freight wise, potential insurance if something happens to it. So that was the basis of it.
No, that was answered today by our train rep I've been talking with.
Perfect.
So
Also, like I said, on your board agenda, you'll see that installation was bid separately because Train does not install. But what we did, Train gives us a basically what you need to install, the parts and all that stuff, so that an installer wouldn't come in and say, jack up the installation, you guys need this, this, and that. It gives a very strict list of, here's what you need to install these units, this is the time, and all those things. So if you guys have any questions, like I said, we're going to use this kind of as a discussion, and we'll table the vote and make a decision in the July meeting.
Anybody have any questions or discussion?
No, just along that line, I think is coming up with a strategy that really, I guess, gets the most bang for our buck, longevity-wise, is to replace them as they go out or in them packages. So we just need to come up with that strategy, I think.
when I discussed with the train rep in May and with the two quotes that I've gotten from the installers, I've expressed to both of them that we will, when we get the go-ahead to go forward, we will change out all the units that's going to affect the classrooms first, because those are readily available more than what the bigger units are. Anything that's going to affect classroom-wise, teaching-wise, we will get changed first. The gym, since it requires the bigger units, will get changed at a convenient time, maybe at a fall break or Thanksgiving, cafeteria, stuff like that. But it's the main environment of the students is what I've expressed to them. That'll get changed.
Ask.
Yeah, they basically summarized and did not give a total quote, but they said per unit this is how much it costs to install.
One quote has, I think, 3,700 for the smaller units and 5,000 for the larger one. And then the second quote I received today, they're a little bit more, but it's the same steps of what they're going to take for switching them out.
So we talk about staggering some of this. Obviously, is there another threshold we're going to know with say the 1.9 million of how long we can actually sit on that? to an extent to play this out.
Yeah, and that's what I was talking to Mr. Boone about, is that we can extend this essentially life of the bond, correct?
If I may, Jeff Robert with Hilltop Securities, so when the board approves a bond issue, they reasonably expect to spend it within 3 years. If after 5 years you haven't spent it and your investments are earning over and above what's called your arbitrage yield, you can still have the proceeds available, but then we have to go to yield restrict those funds. So for instance, if you're earning 5% after 5 years and your arbitrage yield is 4, we've got to go out and buy government securities that are going to yield 4 or less while you still have that money out there. Is how that works.
So what we'll do is I'm gonna get with Kirk and Josh and then when we come back to July, I'm gonna give you guys a list of age of units, where they're at, what we're doing, and then we can have a plan that you guys can look at and kind of evaluate as like over that amount of time, so that we can stay within all the confines and all that. We can still extend taxpayer money and efficacy, of course. And then, like I said, have a plan. I think that's the deal, is everybody just wants to know what the hardcore plan is, so that we can, like I said, communicate to everybody and they're not wondering why things are or not getting done. So at July, we'll have a phased plan for you guys.
Thank you, gentlemen. All right, so we are tabling B and C, is that correct? Okay. All right, so moving on to D. Consider all matters incident and related to the issuance and sale of Maypearl Independent School District Unlimited Tax Refunding Bonds Series 2026, including the adoption of an order authorizing the issuance of such bonds, establishing parameters for the sale and issuance of such bonds, and delegating certain matters to authorized district officials. I'm not reading that again. No.
That would be the language from your bond attorney, not me. And I promise you don't pay her by the word. So that's good. Again, Jeff Robert with Hilltop Securities. I help the district and Josh out with the bond or debt side of the house for Maypearl ISD. And I had warned Jeremy coming in that we're probably going to get in the weeds a little bit on some legislation that went into effect when they met last year, but then there's also some legislation that's going to go into effect this year. As I go through this, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to stop me. So the district receives what's called additional state aid for homestead exemption. People refer to it as ASAHI. There's so many acronyms in this business. That's just another one. So you receive hold harmless money for all of the increases in the homestead exemption. So ASAHI 1, as I'll call it, was back in 2015 when they raised it from $15,000 to $25,000. 2 was in 21 when they went from 25 to 40. 3, 40 to 100, and then most recently, there's 4A and 4B. One of them going from 100 to 140,000, which is Senate Bill 4, and then just below that, they also raised the exemption for over 65 and disabled homeowners from 10,000 to 60, to where they're getting a total of $200,000. That's SB 23. You get hold harmless that we calculate each year. Unfortunately, we don't get the comptroller values to calculate this funding until February of each year, which is 6 months after you set your tax rate. So you'd think that the normal way of doing it would be to be conservative. You know, we don't want to undershoot or overshoot the amount that we think we're going to get and then get less. However, there was a provision put into Senate Bill 4 and Senate Bill 23 that states that if you over levy, that they will take away dollar for dollar ASAHI 4A and 4B for every dollar that you over levy. And I'll show you numbers here in just a second. So what that does is that kind of makes you think, golly, we got to be aggressive on our budgeting because we don't want to over levy or we're going to give up state money. It's also, in the past, if you had money left over at the end of the year, you might say, okay, we just want to pay off some bonds. We've got a surplus of $100,000 in our INS budget. We can pay off bonds clean, easy, no problem. Unfortunately, that language doesn't allow for it because it has to be a scheduled payment. So your revenues are your tax collections, your INS tax collections, plus your ASAHI money, less your scheduled debt service payment. If there is a positive amount of money left over after that, then they're going to start reducing your Asahi money. So a defeasance is not a scheduled bond payment. A refunding issue is a scheduled bond payment. The other thing that goes into effect this year for the first time is that when you set the tax rate this year, if your budget has any surplus in it whatsoever, the board member that makes the motion is going to have to make a motion saying, we have a surplus of X amount. We're going to use that surplus for this, and 60% of the board, so 5 out of 7, have to approve that. Now, that even if you do that, you can still lose the Asahi money if you're in an over levy situation. So here's where we kind of get in the weeds, and I apologize, but I wanted to show you the calculation. Up at the top, I've got the different homestead exemption values all the way across the board. So they factor in column 1. If we were still at $15,000 homestead exemption, your tax base would be $1,012,000,000. At $25,000, it's at $994,000. At $40,000, it's $967,000, so on and so forth. So it gives you all the values of where you would be at those different levels. And then we calculate a percentage. And again, we don't get these values until February, 6 months after you set your tax rate. So we calculate all of these percentages for each one of these levels in that third row. And then ultimately this year, the calculated amounts that you'll receive in Asahi funding for each level is on that bottom row of the top table. I put those numbers in red because those are the numbers, those are the amounts that they will reduce dollar for every dollar that you over levy. So right now, if you combine all of those on that bottom row, that's $574,000 for this current year in Asahi hold harmless money. So just a simple budget. In the middle table there, you have INS collections of $2.1 million, your Asahi funding $574,073, our scheduled payments $2,481,000. So if I take the first two numbers, add them together, and then subtract the third, I've got $192,000 surplus. So what actually happens is the top row, or the middle row of the very bottom table. What they'll do is instead of $574,000, you're only going to get $381 because they're going to reduce your Asahi funding that you see up there in the top right in red. They're going to reduce that dollar for dollar by $192,000 to where now we're going to get $381 instead of the $574. That will balance the budget, and you'd have $0. Or you could do a refunding, and I'll show you that in just a second. You could do a refunding where you just accelerate payment into this current year, fiscal year in August. You up your payment, your bond payment from that $2,481,000 that you see kind of a second from the right on the bottom. From $2,481,000, we up it to $2,680,000, and we make sure we're over and above. We actually have a small deficit just to make sure that we're not losing any Asahi whatsoever. So that would be the scenario. Those are the two scenarios. You could do nothing, and your budget would be balanced, but they would balance it by taking away state money. Or you could do the refunding, and it'll save money for the district. It's kind of a quirky thing because this is not something that we've typically done because this is brand new, but it would allow you to get the entire amount of Asahi money. So what would the refunding look like? What we would literally do on the left in columns 2, 3, and 4, that's your 2023 debt service that we'd refund. And we would just go take $500,000 off of the very last maturity. And we would, on the right, in columns 5, 6, and 7, we would push it into the current year, and we would also push some into next year to where we wouldn't be in a deficit, in a over levy situation, because I believe your certified preliminary estimated values have you going up about 9%, which is pretty substantial. So if we push principal into those first 2 years, A, it lets us manage the tax rate, but B, it saves the dollars that you see there in column 8. So the total savings on the bottom line is $438,000, but in actuality, those numbers in red, so those are what I call, those are negative savings, meaning that's an increase to your debt service. Those are actually being paid for by the state because you're going to get your hold harmless money. So really, it should be 0, 0, and then the savings after that in all those other years because you're not going to be making those payments out of your funds. You're going to receive that from the state of Texas. The other thing is because the 2023 is not currently callable, we have to do this as a taxable refunding. Normally we use tax exempt rates. You have to be 90 days within a call date in order to do a tax exempt refunding. So this is going to be a high interest rate taxable refunding. We're not going to get a rating on it, so it's going to be unrated, but The final payment's going to be February 15th of 2027. So that's less than a 7-month transaction. And so I'm going to guess that we'll be paying, somewhere, I think what did I use on this? I used 575, which is high, but the difference between 575 and $3.75 on that second payment in 2027, that's about $3,700. That's about all that is, because it's only going to accrue for 6 months. So really, we're not very interest rate sensitive. If this was a 20-year financing, yes, we wouldn't want to do this. But we're talking about a 7-month financing that will save money. You can see the interest that it'll reduce your debt service by 2028 and out, which will open a little bit of capacity for a future election. But B, it'll hopefully allow you to maximize the hold harmless funding that you're due from the state. So this is kind of a frustrating quirk that they've put in there, because there's a lot of moving parts that continue to move after you set your tax rate. So it's really kind of impossible to hit it exactly. To give you an example, I work with Rockwall ISD, and we just did this exact type of financing for them, and they have a $55 million payment, and they over levied by $300,000. And I said, that's pretty good. That's about a 0.5% variance. You did pretty good. And his point was, well, to people on the outside looking in, it basically is saying I over levied by $300,000 and shifted the burden from the state to my local taxpayers. He said, so I don't care how small it is, I want to fix it. And so that's what we did. And districts I've talked to that are interested in kind of the same thing, because they don't want to give away state money if they can avoid it. And it can produce interest savings down the line. So, yeah, how does this work? What we're asking the board to consider tonight, if you want to move forward with this, is that you would approve what's called a parameter bond order. I believe we did we do a parameter on the new money issue? I can't remember if we did or not. I can't remember if that was a mechanism we did back in 23 for the new money issuance. But anyway, the way this works is that the board delegates pricing authority to senior administration officials, which would be Dr. Martin or Mr. Boone. There's parameters in the order. Those parameters have to be met to allow them to approve the issue. So the order that was prepared by the bond attorney that gave you the lengthy agenda item there, the pricing officers, again, Dr. Martin or Mr. Boone, we're only going to, I think it'll be about 500,000. I just put $1 million to be to give me some flexibility, but it'll probably be around 500,000. We're still trying. I'm gonna get a better number, hopefully, for what we think the value is going to be next year. And if it's higher than that 9%, we might do, say, 600,000 or something instead of 500. So give me a little flexibility there. Minimum savings, we're just saying it's got to produce positive savings for the district. Final maturity date, I put 28. I think it'll be 27, but again, just to be flexible. And the delegation expiration is 180 days, but we would get this done by first week in August at the latest, hopefully sooner than that. Mr. Norman, was that getting in the weeds? Wow. Want to make sure I held up my end of the bargain for you there.
You officially blew my mind, sir. Good job.
Well, it's depending on your perspective, every time the legislature gets done, it's either interesting or problematic. So, or challenging. I'll say challenging. That's the way I look at it.
So what exactly would the motion be if we want to move forward?
It'd basically be a motion to approve the issuance, kind of reading that agenda item. You don't need to read all of it, but I would just say motion to approve the issuance of refunding bonds for Maypearl ISD. That would work.
Do y'all have any questions for?
We're not losing them. Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
keep them from losing
Well,
state funds.
and that is one thing. So the district up to this point hasn't received the full 574 because the state paid you based upon an estimate that was given back in probably May before you set your tax rate. And the collection amount that they have is higher than what we've got. So this will probably ultimately be, I think they've shorted you about $140,000 at this point. You may have to float that with INS fund balance, but then you'll get it in the settle up once they see your audit, and then, hey, here's your tax collections, and they're necessary to where they need to be in order to justify that payment. So here's your remaining that'll get you up to the entire 574. So it's a little bit of a timing issue, because unfortunately, things aren't automatic. You know, when we do it, the TEA doesn't immediately go, oh, you know, hey, here, we'll fix it, we'll send it to them. I think they send those out a couple of times in October and November, if I'm not mistaken. So you may see a small hit on INS fund balance during this fiscal year, but you'll get it right back next fiscal year.
Dr. Martin, do you have a recommendation?
I recommend we move forward.
Okay. I will make a motion. Related to the issuance and sale of Maypearl ISD School District Unlimited Tax Refunding Bond Series 2026 as presented. Any discussion, thoughts? No? All right, all in favor? All right, all four.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. All right, moving on to item E, the 26-27 preliminary budget workshop.
All right. So first, I just want to say thank y'all for the meetings that we had, just kind of one-offs beforehand, just so that we can kind of get a little bit further ahead through this budget workshop. And I did want to kind of go over just some basics of budgeting for school districts. We do this kind of every year, but just as a refresher, kind of what the process is and what we're ultimately trying to achieve. So we're determining if revenues are sufficient to cover expenses and how we're controlling our resources and providing transparency into our organization's performance, accountability, evaluating the performance of managers, motivating managers to strive to achieve budget goals. This is the Texas Education Code 44.002 that is saying that it's the superintendent's duty to prepare or cause to be prepared a proposed budget covering all proposed expenditures for the district the following fiscal year. And then these are just kind of more education code bullet points. I won't spend too much time on those. Budget must be adopted before the adoption of a tax rate. And so we'll typically bring that to you in August, and it'll be in the same meeting, just we have to make sure that we adopt the budget before we adopt the tax rate. With our budgeting and accounting practices, we are governed by the FASRAG, is the short term for it. It stands for the Financial Accountability, school regulations. And so these are the account code structures for that accounting, the 20-digit accounting code. You have a fund code, a function, object code, and it all basically just ties down to how you're spending your money, where you're spending your money, and what demographics you're spending your money on. And so that just kind of goes into more detail. And I'll, upload this PowerPoint to your board book after tonight, so y'all will have it available to look at anytime. And then these are the function codes here. That's the main ones that we go by. And so then just to kind of keep moving forward, funding of school districts is primarily by local funding with property taxes and our any VATRE pennies that we add if we choose to go that route, and also our interest in sinking property taxes. The state will then use its state formula to come up with our aid that they give us based on our average daily attendance and what the weights of those students are. So if we move on to just the budget considerations, let's take a look at kind of the projection for 25-26 as we end this fiscal year. So on the revenue side, so that column on the left is kind of our projected ending revenue. And so for local, you can see that's 5,527,198. The state side is 10,126,179. The federal, which is primarily our SHARS money, it's 2,259,000 right now, but that is mostly due to a pricing error that's been ongoing since the beginning of October. And so the HHSC has not given an updated pricing list to TMHP, which is responsible for paying our Medicaid claims. And so we've been battling that out for quite a bit. Dr. Martin's been on some of those emails I've been sending out. And so we're hoping to get that resolved soon, and then we can expect that to jump up. I would estimate, around 30,000 for that. And then on the budget side, you can see in that middle line on the right, our estimated actual ending expenditure budget, I'm putting about a little over 16 million. And so what that does to our difference between our revenue and our actual ending budget is what I'm estimating as a $405,000 hit to our fund balance. And so as we kind of have discussed before, we adopted a $511,000 deficit budget in 24-25. And then this year we adopted a deficit budget of about $48,000. So between this actual deficit that we are projecting to experience, and then the actual deficit that we had in our audit this past year of $168,000, that pretty much puts us exactly where we had expected to realize. Then if we look at our fund balance history and kind of where that's going to lead us, as of right now, our fund balance is 4.6 million. So if we are to expect a $400,000 hit, that would put us at 4.2. And then just to kind of remind about the 3 months of estimated monthly payments to keep in your fund balance, we're probably around the 3.9 million. So we're getting a little close to that threshold there. So then if we go on to 2620,
Before you move on.
Sure.
And you may have had these conversations. I'm sorry I didn't make the pre-meetings, but what did you see that was the biggest from our adopted projected to where we're going to end up? What was the biggest contributor to that expense? Or
well, so one being the elevator remods. We realized the maintenance tax note in the last fiscal year. Mm-hmm. And so but now we're actually paying for it in this fiscal year. And so that was also, some of those projects with the maintenance tax note were added like necessary expenses, but they weren't necessarily going to erase all the deficit that we were experiencing. Those deficits came from increasing payroll and salaries primarily.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So then if we look at what our considerations were going into 26-27, the impact of the 89th legislative session, the teacher retention allotment. So, we increased those salaries this year by the mandated amounts. And then to the basic allotment, we only got a $55 increase there. And then on the student enrollment and attendance, I'm going to be estimating our budget based on 1118, which is where we ended this past year. We're going to look at increase in property values, and then, of course, like Mr. Roberts was saying too, the 140,000 homestead exemption, and then what that does to our maximum compressed rate, and then recruitment and retention, inflation with all the necessary expenditures and those costs going up, how that affects us, the safety and security standards, and then, like I was just saying, the 3 months expenditures in our fund balance. So those are all considerations going into this new budget. These were our goals: to preserve and improve the quality of instruction and services, retain and recruit quality staff, and then continuous improvements of safety, technology, and operations. So this is just kind of a list of what we somewhat know and what we estimate. So our basic allotments at 6,215, and a reminder on that, that's what the state is giving per kid in attendance. And so that has gone up $55 this past legislative session. And then our 2026 estimate of values, $870,841,108, and that's our current preliminary estimate from the Ellis County Appraisal District. 26-27 budget based on ADA of 1118, and then we have the 140,000 homestead exemption increase to the 65 and over adjusted freeze. And then when looking at all the data in our template from Region 13, and then also Moak and Casey has a template out now that some districts are using to help estimate the state aid. That also gives us an estimated maximum compressed tax rate, and right now it's showing 58 cents, or nearly 59 cents. And then the total 26-27 estimated FSP ASF state aid, that's basically our state aid based on our Tier 1 and Tier 2 programs, $8,925,740. Then the total estimated local revenue being from property taxes and then interest earnings and, even like our ticket sales for athletic events and just all the miscellaneous revenue from local. That's going to be about $5,787,090. And then our TRS on behalf is estimated at $714,309. And then our estimated SHARs, keeping that at 40,000 just to be on the conservative side. We have met with MSB, which is our SHARs consultants, and they've given us their projections of what we could earn with all our Medicaid claims in the next year. And so I've still kept it conservative on the revenue side just because, as you know, we've always, the past 3 years, have been experiencing reductions in those fundings for those claims. Is there any questions on that before we move forward? So the next section is going over the 26-27 proposed compensation plan. And so we've discussed this being a minimum of 2% increase to all staff. And the reason why we say a minimum of 2%, because there are some steps in the current schedule for teachers that, because of House Bill 2, provide an increase of greater than 2%. And so we would still honor that percentage there. And you'll see that in the next slide as well. And then we also have adjusted a new pay scale, taking out the life skills and the instructional paraprofessionals out of just the general paraprofessional salary schedule. And so that would be adjusted for a small increase there, just for the different duties and things that those folks are assigned. And then we have additional budgeted positions, including a groundskeeper. On that one, we are actually a net positive because we're doing away with the contracted landscaping. And then on the tech apps para at middle school, we're going to add that position. Then we have a campus registrar position that's being added, and that's to help out in the office areas at each campus. So 3 actual new roles, but only 1 add because some of those roles are coming from different areas that we're reorganizing. And then the teacher athletic trainer is also a new position, but with that one, we're actually getting a $35,000 donation from Baylor Scott and White towards our CTE program for the purpose of adding this teacher and trainer. So that overall, payroll compensation plan would result in an increase of $268,670.
And just a couple points that I want to nail down is that, with all the money that the state says they provided schools, all that money was earmarked for the most part. Hardly any of that money went to paying the bills. That was, earmarked as to mandates and things like that. So when we're putting together a budget, we're working real hard on trying to get a balanced budget presented that we can live within. But, I want to clarify that, like I said, the amount given per student versus inflation is nowhere in any relation close. It's almost comical. But also on the added positions here, with the groundskeeper, like Mr. Boone said, we're gaining money on losing that contract and keeping that in house. The registrar positions, we added. One thing we heard from our principals and our teachers is that our front offices were stretched, we'll say. So we wanted to make sure to get some relief at our campus offices. That's kind of one of the backbones of. I say one of the backbones. We have several, but to have one person work those buildings is difficult. But we were able to do that by moving some people around within the district. Some people, like one of the positions from central office is being reallocated to the campuses, and we were able to do that with giving. So every campus will have 2 secretaries now, but we only had to add 1 position. And then the athletic trainer, that was something with Baylor Scott and White. They donated some money to our CTE programs. They gave us some freedom to add a position that would help our CTE program and then also the betterment of our kids. But so like I said, we are reallocating and things like that to make sure we can get a budget right, but also not cut anything from our kids and kind of add support to our campuses as well.
And then this slide is a visual of what that proposed teacher pay scale will look like. And so you can see those percentages increase by 2% year over year. There's this year where, because of House Bill 2, that increase was going to be at 3.06%, so we left it at 3.06% increase. Same here with the 8.75% increase. So those percentages that were going to be higher based on the House Bill 2 scale, we left those alone. And so then, but anyone else is going to get a minimum of 2%. And then on this side, it's what our life skills and instructional paraprofessional scale would look like. And those instructional paraprofessionals are folks that are actually teaching in courses, like a music teacher at LSK, art at LSK, and tech apps at middle school. And then, so you can see the hourly rate and the annual salary, min, mid, and max scale.
And one thing we're really trying to do is make sure that we could, reward our staff with a salary increase. But what we really want to do this year is pour into coaching our teachers and making us, and through coaching and supporting our teachers, obviously increasing student achievement scores and things like that. But with us being teacher incentive allotment district, the more teachers we can coach and increase student improvement, with our teachers, the 9 teachers we have in district that are TIA, that salary with TIA makes them equal as far as their step would be at some of the bigger schools around our district. So, with the 2%, that gives something to everybody, but that got hot. What we want to make sure we're doing is providing an avenue to where, once again, we can take advantage of what the state programs are to make sure our teachers are getting paid appropriately, but rewarding those teachers that are doing a good job, increasing student achievement with our kids.
So in a moment, you'll have an opportunity to make a motion on the compensation package. But before we get there, let's look at just a very rough draft and preliminary budget for 2026-2027. So on the revenue side, you kind of heard the numbers in the presentation earlier, so I won't go over those again, but the total being $15,467,137. And then on the expenditure side on the right, I forgot I added all these transitions. The payroll alone is $12,228,506. And then all the other expenditures from budget requests and district budgeted expenditure line items, that comes to a total of $3,417,810 for a grand total of $15,646,317. And then you can see that would put us at a deficit of $179,179. But as you know, we're learning about opportunities to even bring that to close to balanced, if not over, then that's going to be through CTE, new instructional facility allotment money, and that is from a state mandated funding source. And so what that originally was only available to standalone brand new campuses, but they have amended that to now include renovated portions of campuses that are used for CTE purposes. And so that's exactly what we have going on at the high school. And so I'm working on getting that application put in, and we're hoping that that would pretty much balance this budget.
And one thing I want to give Josh credit for too is that two things. First, the number you're seeing here is a very conservative number. We're still early in this process. As we get closer to August and adopting that budget, we're hoping we will get closer to, like I said, we still got some wiggle room to get this closer to balanced. But he's also pursuing some options that will once again take advantage of state resources to help balance that budget. But the other thing that we're doing right here also, like I said, this is very conservative right now. The last thing we want to do is we talked about in our meeting, is a lot of schools will present a budget in August. It says, hey, we're balanced, but they're running an ADA higher on their budget than they know they're going to bring in. Right now, we're running a very conservative ADA so that we know when we present whatever we present to you guys in the public in August, that's legit. That's going to be a real off number that we're going to be able to live within for that year. We're not going to get to the end and realize, oh, guys, hey, we bounced at one ADA, or we showed you one ADA and came in with another, and now we're running a deficit. What we're wanting to do is make sure we give you guys all the numbers up front, prepare you for what it might look like with, like I said, by the chance in August, we can get a whole lot closer budget. That's the goal, to balance, but whatever we do present is going to be, a legit number, a pathway to what we're going to be doing.
And that's all I got. So do y'all have any questions for me?
Just confirming, like the elevators are coming out, that we're going to encumber that before the end of August.
Yes.
This year.
So they actually are already encumbered. We've actually done a 50% down payment on those. And then, like Kirk said, they're getting the work done over the summer. So we'll expect to have them paid as soon as they're completed and invoiced.
Gotcha. Is there anything else that we think may hit that? Any big things that may carry over?
No, so that, and just to be clear, that's included in my 400,000 number that I was, yeah.
And that's based off the 1118 that we ended up with, or your 1111?
That's the 1111 for this year. So
Right, for this year.
Right. Yeah, that is the 400,000 deficit is what I am projecting to end with this year. Yeah, and so that is including the elevator remods. It's including the last 3 months of expenditures that I'm trying to kind of project out. We have our utility payments we're still paying, and anything else that might come up. Like, we do a lot of vehicle repairs over the summer with buses and getting the registrations done. So all that's kind of just like, you might say crystal ball, like projected, but it's all in there as a, placeholder for, what we're going to expect to spend. Now, outside of any, crazy happenings over the summer, that, we know firsthand, like, some things happen that's out of our control, and those things cost money. So, but outside of that, that is what I'm projecting.
And the CTE wing, do you have those projections? I just don't know if you said those. I think you
Not
told
quite.
us, but-
Whenever we were meeting, so we were just now getting into the logistics of filling out that survey from TEA, and so I did get this week the projected enrollment for those courses that are going to be in that wing. And so now my job is I'm going to go in and fill out this survey from TEA, their template survey, and put in each course that's in that wing and then what the expected ADA is for those classes. And then it'll give us a projected, and then we have to submit that as an application. And then TEA determines based on all the applications they receive, which they have made mention opening it up. They expect to receive a lot more applications. So they're going to be probably going through the weeds of all those and determining what that final payout per ADA is going to be. What the notification said is it could be up to $1,000 per ADA in that wing. So, I mean, what my first thought was, like, if we had 180 kids in average daily attendance in those CTE courses in that wing, that balances our budget.
If I remember right from our training that we had, that's not guaranteed money, right? It's like they have allotted money, and then once
Right.
that's gone, it doesn't matter what comes in and it's approved, right? It's like the state has a certain amount of money. Is that right? Or
So they've earmarked a certain amount, and so then depending on how many applications they get, I guess, is how they would divvy that up.
And the other thing, we may propose and adopt our budget before that's determined. But what we'll do, once that's awarded, we'll make sure, like I said, in transparency, to make sure we're communicating that to the public as well, just so they know where we're at.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yes, we would, in transparency, we would amend the budget at that time, right?
Yes, sir.
Whenever that did come in, we would make a budget amendment.
Yeah, we would bring you a budget amendment and then post that in addition to our website and social medias as well.
Yeah. And just to some clarifying language here, you continue to say this is a conservative amount, right? But you're saying this is worst case scenario-ish, right? It's not conservative well, my point is it's not conservative like, hey, this is it, but it really could be way worse.
No, so
Right.
it's conservative. It's also very estimated at this
Yeah.
point. So
But it's conservative based on the ADA, right?
Right.
You're using a conservative number for the ADA.
Right.
And so it could be lower,
Yeah, yes.
possibly could be higher, but more than likely it'll be lower if everything goes the way that we think it will. We're just wanting to make sure that the number out there is, we're not underselling what it could be, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure that's clear so that people that are watching this aren't
Yeah.
going, hey, this is conservative. Oh, man, we could have a $3 million deficit. by
No,
the
when
end
we're
of
talking about
time.
conservative, this is ideally we're projecting to be the top end of what we'd present. And ideally, like I said, there's a lot of work to do. My deal is I didn't want to come in here tonight, and say, hey, man, everything's rosy. We're going to put $100,000 back. And then by the time we get to that time, and then people look at us like, we wanted to make sure that, this is projected to be the worst case scenario. Yes, sir.
All right. Moving to F.
Do you need a motion for the?
It's the next.
Oh, okay.
for the
It's the next item. Moving to F. Consider 26-27 compensation package.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt the 26-27 compensation package as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Only discussion is I wish we could do more.
Absolutely.
That's just want our teachers to know. We love you guys. We wish we could do more.
And, we're going to do everything we can to, like I said, pour in our staff, train, coach, and get as many people to that TIA level, because that's where we can do the most for our teachers and our taxpayers.
Yep.
It's truly.
Agreed. Okay. All in favor? All right. All four.
thanks, Josh.
Mr. Boone, we appreciate you understanding what all that means, because
and as you can see, when the financial advisor comes in, I'm like, I need you here because
Yeah, it's a lot of mathematical gymnastics. So, okay. It is exactly 7:30, and we will be going into closed session. All right, it is 8:42. We are now out of closed session.
Make a motion to approve the new principal Maypearl High School's contract as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor? All four? Congratulations, sir. Welcome to the team. All right, there's no dissent. It's 8:44. We adjourn.